So I want to move a little bit off of the scale question, which is, I think, predominantly what VAST tries to address, and really talk more about the transparency, which really relates back to measurement. And I think that's a lot of what the future of video advertising, and frankly, all advertising in digital is going to be all about. That's my opinion anyway. But the question I have for the panel is really that many say that reliable audience measurement is a key to making digital video truly take off. Right? Do you think that's really true? And if it is true, who stands to win in that equation, right? Is it a fait accompli that traditional measurement vendors are going to do that? Or do emergent measurement approaches stand a chance in that game?
I could take a stab at that. I think that there is lots of players who have highly competent tools and services in the audience measurement space. So I don't think it's going to be only the ComScores or the Nielsen's of the world. We are using folks like Quantcast, folks like Datran, to add that layer of audience verification, if you will, on top of our video campaigns. I mean, at the end of the day, and I missed Donna this morning, which I'm sorry for, but I saw her at the video day a couple of months ago. It is all about trying to figure out at an agency side or from a marketer perspective, what is the objective kind of cross touch point measurement that is going to allow us to make good, smart, strategic decisions. And for a good surrogate for that, or why this idea of audience verification popped up in earnest, I'd say like 12, 18 months ago, is because the rest of the world, unlike us in the internet space, is bought on an audience demographic. And we have always been bought on a total person's demographic. So right off the bat, there's an inequality there. So we thought, we're going to make it equal, so now we at least can talk the same vernacular as they do in the television world. And we have, and we did, and that's cool. Now the next step is identifying value, which I'm sure she talked about. So now that we have the same kind of currency, is the online or video GRP at adults 18 to 34 equivalent to a television 18 to 34 GRP? And we know the answer is no. What is that relationship? So long-winded answer to say yes, audience verification or audience measurement is very important. Doesn't necessarily have to be the panel-based guys that are getting there, although it would be nice to be able to track across screens with a Nielsen. And we probably have to just take it to the next level in order to progress that conversation.
You had to use the verification word. We were going to avoid that. But there you go. We're not going to call this a shootout, though, but that's all right. Nick or Max?
Yeah, I mean, we are definitely very active in the data space. To be honest with you, it really has not affected our video business all that much yet. I mean, we have really good scale. We've spent a lot of time over the last 4 years leveraging our video scale across a portfolio of properties that have both full episodes and short video. And of course, we launched Hulu along with News Corp. Now ABC is a part of that. You know, unlocking real scale across that with a single currency would probably accelerate that a bit. But as a practical matter, Hulu's its own entity. We leverage that distribution, but there's not a really strong single view into that at the data level today. And so for us, that's a barrier. So while we do believe in data and sort of qualifying our audience, I think there's probably a little bit of time before that becomes critical to our business.
So to dig in a little deeper on that topic, when we start to talk about audience targeting or audience verification around deals, what level of complexity does that bring to your operational teams, right, to your ad ops teams? Is it sort of viewed, especially in the video space where the CPMs are high and the adjustments, right, probably have a lot more impact? We're not talking about 0.3%, differences in, $3 CPM deals, but we're talking about, $25, $50 CPMs theoretically around video content. Does that work seem to pay off more there? And is it manageable at this stage? Yeah,
I mean, we're sort of unique in that over the last few years, our business has become very video-centric, although we enjoy a strong display business. A lot of the innovation has come around video, and all that heavy lifting really falls on the product team and the operations team. And 3 years ago, after iVillage was acquired by NBCU and Stephen Gold and Peter Naylor came into the organization, they were really tasked with, all right, how do we create a single currency across a bunch of different CMSs, a bunch of different homegrown players, a bunch of different outsourced players. And so really the first iteration was convincing all these different businesses they had to get on the same player, and that was probably a 2-year process, and we got through that, and it really has paid out by giving us the ability to sell vertically and horizontally and leverage this high quality content that we have across the portfolio. So, you kind of breathe a sigh of relief and everybody's slapping high fives, and then we announced this joint venture with Hulu, right? And so all of a sudden it's this huge disruptive video distribution source that we've got to harness because we've got great content that's growing massively on a platform that is foreign to ours. And so again, Stephen and his team had to figure out, okay, how do we figure out what the creative solution looks like? How do we partner with Hulu? How do we traffic again? How do we forecast? How do we manage that? How do we anticipate growth quarter to quarter? And we put in a lot of heavy lifting there over the last couple of years, and quite frankly, it's paid off really well for us because we invested early, we grew as Hulu grew, we invested resource as was required to get really smart about how to leverage that disruptive growth, and so we actually have really good operational efficiency happening there, and it's very foreign to the rest of our organization, and so we've been fortunate to build a resource and team that is able to leverage that to deal with the growth.
I mean, one of the things that we think about in that space, right, is that ad servers today, you really don't traffic things against audience, right? I mean, you may have some backwards ways of doing that, but predominantly ad servers are designed to deliver against impressions, right, or sponsorship. And so the different perspective that selling by audience and then delivering against a guaranteed audience presents, I think, I don't know, Steve Dove's gone to the dark side, so I don't need to talk to him about it anymore, but whoever's taking his place on the DFP side, right, they stand, I think, probably in the future, and I don't know if Max wants to talk about what FreeWheel may be doing in this space, but targeting based on audience, right, from the ad server level, I think is going to be critical. When we start to look at, and so sort of the next question on the docket, right, how does increasing fragmentation, right, of audience, of devices, of destinations, of platforms, of TV everywhere, you name it, how does that impact your processes, ad ops, and our ability to monetize all of this?
Absolutely. So I think it's interesting that we've heard from almost every speaker that's come up today this idea of consolidation, the idea of fighting the enemy, which is fragmentation. Fragmentation, you can think of it this way. When you have a consolidated audience, and the cautionary note would be when you're talking about audience, make sure it's your entire audience. It's not sections of your audience. It's everyone who is part of your brand. I would say that what you have there is this beautiful Ming vase. You have this thing, it's worth a fortune. And if you break it up into little pieces, you have fragments of a Ming vase, which is, they're valuable on their own. They're these little pieces of something which is pretty cool. It's part of this great brand, but on their own, they're worth, like we heard that stat of, if we don't consolidate these standards, we end up with a 3x growth maybe over the next year. If we do consolidate the standards, you get that logarithmic growth, the exponential value increase when you're consolidating everything and dealing with one audience, one buy, one set of delivery, and I think Vast and VPaid are great examples of how to enable something like that. And I would say fragmentation is probably the biggest enemy to, especially operations. We heard a question earlier about education, and it's difficult to find trained, good operations personnel, and the reason is that there's so much to know. There's so many different proprietary things that you need to know about the server that you're trafficking in, the environments that it's going to, the content types of the ads, whether it's HTML5, does it support this or that technically? And I think the ultimate goal is to remove those technical complexities. The business should be just that. It should be a business, and it should be, when you fragment it into all these different sections, you're splitting up your buys, and it becomes a technology problem which really doesn't need to exist.